Samuel Stubbs, yardbarker.com. Denny Samuel Stubbs, Field Level Media. Austin Samuel Stubbs, Yardbarker.
Welcome to the Scrum Session Podcast with Samuel Stubbs.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Scrum Session Podcast. This is episode 4 of the show. I'm your host, Samuel Stubbs, a NASCAR journalist for yardbarker.com. This weekend, I'll be at Pocono Raceway covering the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series races. So to make up for what will be a relatively sparse show tonight in regard to interviews and driver sound bites, we only have one of them. We'll get to that later in the show. I'll be bringing you coverage hopefully every day. If not every day, at least Sunday evening. We'll have coverage from Pocono. You won't be able to see it, obviously, visually, since this is an audio show, but you will be able to hear it, hopefully hear maybe some of the unique sights and, unique sounds you hear at a racetrack. So I'll be doing those hopefully Friday, Saturday, Sunday, at the very least Sunday, but I do want to do one each day to kind of make up for what is a sparse show tonight, and because it's cool to do these things at the racetrack, on location, on site, where the things you're talking about are actually happening. We do have a lot to talk about tonight, even though we only have one driver soundbite to play, a relatively short one too, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The main thing I want to talk about, and again, this is a short show, 15, 20 minutes, so we're not going to get as in-depth as other shows have about this, is Shane Van Gisbergen's win. Not just his win, but of course the playoff ramifications that come with it. He's now locked into the postseason by virtue of winning at Mexico City, dominating at Mexico City, winning by, 16 and a half seconds. It's ridiculous. I mean, what else can you say? It's Shane Van Gisbergen. It shouldn't surprise us that he whipped the field like he did. I mean, that was a whooping that he put on everybody down there in Mexico City. I don't think anybody's surprised about that. That's not the controversial part of his win, was how good he was, because you can't deny how good SVG is on road courses. Of course, for the second year in a row, we are debating about a winner coming from the deep, dark depths of the abyss of the NASCAR Cup Series point standings, winning a race and now being locked into the playoffs. Now, the difference with SVG and Harrison Burton is if there's 10 races left in the Cup Series regular season, if there were to be 7 more winners, assuming it's not Cole Custer, Riley Herbst, or Cody Ware, who I feel like are pretty much at this point locked themselves down in the basement, the bottom 3 in the standings. Unless they're those drivers, that could knock SVG out. I don't see us getting 7 winners in the last 10 races, new winners, that is. It's not the kind of season it's been. It's been a top-heavy season. I think we'll especially going to tracks like Pocono, this weekend, you're going to have your eyes on the Hamlins, the Reddicks, or I guess Reddick hadn't won yet, the Hamlins, the Larsons, the Bells, the guys that have already won this year, won multiple times this year, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, and of course there are drivers above the cut line, Reddick, like I mentioned, Chase Elliott, that haven't won yet, that are going to point their way in regardless, say for just a meteor striking their season, metaphorically and ending it all. But of course, we're talking about SVG, not for his win, but because it's NASCAR, and NASCAR fans love to have a much more negative than positive discourse. We're talking about whether or not he deserves a playoff spot. And it's an issue, I don't know, I guess I'm independent on it, because it's hard for me to really make one claim one way or the other, because on one hand, I totally get it. I get why folks like Richard Petty and a lot of fans are frustrated that a driver who entered Sunday's race 33rd in the standings, left Sunday even with a win, 30th in the standings, is guaranteed the chance to fight for a championship. Shane Van Gisbergen, knock on wood, is and I don't say that because I don't like the guy, it's just, he's not going to win the championship. He's not going to. He is still far too green on ovals. I don't think Trackhouse would have the speed anyway. Shane Van Gisbergen is not going to win this championship. And that begs the question, okay, who would in his place? And everybody that is against this format, the winner you're in, they say, okay, well, it's not fair to the 15th, 16th place guy in points. Folks hate to break it to you, they're probably not going to win the championship either. So therein lies the other side of this equation, right? Is the fact that they're probably not going to win the title either. They might have a better chance because they've been more consistent. They've shown more consistent speed. But at the same time, everybody since the drop of the green flag in Daytona Beach, Florida on February 16th, has known the rules. This is a don't hate the player, hate the game situation. Not that anybody's hating on SVG for it. Everybody's commending him, lauding him as they should for his win, his dominant performance. But it's a shame the playoffs have to cloud that. Same thing last year when Harrison Burton won in Daytona. It was the 100th win for the Wood brothers. Huge deal, awesome thing, but it was overshadowed by him earning a playoff spot. And Harrison Burton should not have sniffed a playoff spot last year. I'm sorry. He just shouldn't have. He shouldn't have sniffed a playoff spot at all. But 34th in the standings up to the playoffs because of a win. So I get that side of it. And I might lean more to that side of it because I don't think you should have drivers. I don't think you should have a 16 driver playoff field at all. I think it should be 12 at max, ideally 10. Because at that point we almost have half the full-time field in the Cup Series. Guys, there's 36 full-time teams. We got 16 of them making the playoffs. And I know Major League Baseball, the NFL, they're pretty close to having half of them make it, right? I think the NBA, since now they had the play-ins, like 2/3 of their teams make it. But again, NASCAR isn't stick and ball sports. So it's I can play devil's advocate for each side. I probably lean more towards, we shouldn't have one in my opinion. We shouldn't. But at the same time, everybody's known the rules. Everybody has known the rules that a win gets you into the playoffs. And if you can't win and you're the 14th place guy, unless you can win and be opportunistic in the system, you're not going to win the championship. That's the difference between a 14th place guy like, say, Chase Briscoe this year and Joey Logano last year, because Logano won a race and made the playoffs. Briscoe this year has not had a race where I've looked at him and said, okay, he has winning speed. I'm just using him as an example. I'm not trying to call him out explicitly here, but just picking a guy around that spot on the cut line. I think he's 14th, I think like 39, somewhere around there in points above the cut line right now. And that cut line is obviously going to move. It did in a big way with SVG's win, but comparing a guy like Joey Logano to Chase Briscoe, there are different kinds of 14th place drivers, 14 seeds too in this postseason, right? So that's the difference. Another difference with it too. I honestly, I know Watkins Glen in the playoffs anymore. I would almost rather have a driver that has proven they can win, proven they can be opportunistic in the playoffs over a driver who is just top 15 and top 20 and occasionally top 10 in the field of death. Not that that's not a bad thing. I still think consistency is very valuable in modern NASCAR. Maybe not as much as it once was, obviously, but you still need it in some regards. At the same time, just as much as the guy in 30th isn't going to win the championship, the guy in 16th probably ain't going to win the title either. So that's where it kind of gets to me, and that's where you kind of come to the argument of, okay, well, we need to rework the playoff format. It sounds like NASCAR is going to do that, probably not as much as some fans would like them to, but it sounds like we are going to get changes to the playoff field. So it's a shame. This is the discussion we're having after what I thought was a pretty solid opening weekend for NASCAR Mexico. Obviously, some negative things, some travel mess ups and whatnot. That's going to happen. Charlotte Airport, not to throw shade at the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. I'm just saying we've had, I personally have had an experience or two that wasn't the best. And, of course, just different things. Social media was just a delight this weekend, I'm sure, as all of you who are as chronically online as I am know, in the NASCAR sphere. The big news yesterday I'm recording this Wednesday. Big news Tuesday was Carson Rosberg getting fined $50,000 for the derogatory remarks he made about Mexico City on a Twitch live stream. And, of course, that brought out all sorts of characters out of the woodwork when that news was announced from varying points of opinion. But if we want to talk about Mexico, let's put a positive spin on the weekend. Daniel Suarez winning that Xfinity race Saturday. That was a great story. Coming from last to first after the crash and qualifying. I really liked the weekend. And I wrote about this. You can go read it, yardbarker.com. I wrote about why NASCAR should return to Mexico. And I thought the on-track product was good, right? I thought the on-track product was solid, good, fine. Like any other road course we go to now, it's harder to get just a great race with this car because it drives so good on road courses. The cars need to drive worse on these road courses. That's a big gripe I have with this car. But anyways, I digress. The fan reaction, and yes, there were empty seats. There were empty seats all around the racetrack. I'm not trying to dispel that, but the fan reaction. Jeff Gluck posted a video on Twitter early Sunday morning of Todd Gilliland, and no disrespect to Todd Gilliland. but a guy who has not yet won a cup race, a guy who I believe is 26 in the standings heading to Pocono, he was being mobbed like he was prime Dale Earnhardt by fans wanting to get autographs because NASCAR had not raced in Mexico since 2008, and that was just the Busch Series. Bringing the Cup Series to Mexico, and you've seen this when they've gone to these other new markets, right? You've seen the excitement that these fans have. Think about last year as kind of a similar situation, I guess, Iowa getting a Cup race. They'd had Xfinity. Xfinity had been taken away for a little bit. They bring the Cup Series, and it's a sellout, and the fans love it. I think NASCAR can have that international reach, and people point to F1 and its global audience. NASCAR likely will never, ever get to those astronomical heights that F1 is at. NASCAR does have global appeal. And I know this is just a trip south of the border. They're on the same continent, same kind of thing with Canada. You're not like you're not hosting a race in England and seeing what the fan turnout is, but still seeing that NASCAR, a sport that is so, literally, culturally, mentally, when you ask people to think about NASCAR, you think of the Southeastern United States, right? To see a sport so stuck in its roots, not that they haven't expanded them, but stuck in its roots, I think from a cultural perspective, from those that aren't in the know and don't know, NASCAR's been more bold with the schedule, taking the sport coast to coast. For most people, are going to think of it as a Southern, or at the very broadest, a purely American sport. To see NASCAR go south of the border and get the reaction they did from those fans who were overjoyed to see NASCAR back, who were overjoyed to see Daniel Suarez win that Xfinity race, who were overjoyed to see Cup cars on track for the first time ever in their country, the first International Cup points race since 1958. I believe it was in Toronto, Canada. Richard Petty made his debut in that race. That was so cool to see. And as somebody who's now been watching the sport for over a decade, been covering it in a professional-esque capacity now for about 2 years. It's so cool to see new fans and even people that have been watching for a while and haven't been able to get to a race in the States and now have finally had one be brought to their backyard. That is the coolest thing. That's why I wanted to spend the bulk of this episode talking about Mexico City, because it's such a cool thing. And the fact that, unfortunately, there's this black cloud of hosts of our stuff, I guess, but also this playoff discourse. If you take all of that, if you strip all of that away, all the drama, what you had was a really solid race weekend, a storybook stuff on Saturday with not Hocevar, Suarez winning that race. Shane Van Gisbergen whipping the field on Sunday, but still what I thought was a pretty solid race. And a fan base clearly in Mexico that is passionate about NASCAR, that wants NASCAR back. I think NASCAR, I would love to see this be a long-term relationship. We'll see how that goes. But I think NASCAR would be doing the fans in Mexico a disservice if it did not at least go back for one more year. And I think this could be a deal. If you get the travel logistics more smoothed out, which you need to, this could be a deal that really benefits NASCAR on a global stage. And I know it's just a trip south of the border is not the same as taking your sport on a cross-continental journey like they did when they took them to the Suzuka circuit back in the late 90s. But it is a stepping stone to the global growth and the outreach that NASCAR wants, because that's their goal with this. Yes, you bring a race to a cool new circuit. What they want is international growth. What they want are fans in these markets that are relatively untapped to fall in love with NASCAR. Racing is a worldwide sport, more so than people realize. Auto racing in general, not necessarily stock car racing, but racing in general. I saw something the other day, and I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but around 60 to 70 million people tune in at some point to Formula One races. I've been on IndyCar media Zoom calls recently, and there have been media folks from all over the world calling into these calls, talking to these drivers. I've never seen as many media people as I saw in Mexico City. I wasn't there, but as I saw on the recordings of press conferences and whatnot, and all the journalists that were in our Zooms in the week leading up to that race, all the media availability, they're so excited about it. There is a global, I won't say need, there is a global want for racing, and there can be a global want for NASCAR if NASCAR pursues it, and that's the big thing. To bridge the gap, before we talk briefly about Pocono, I talked with Cole Custer this afternoon on our Ford Performance Media Call, the media availability Ford puts out with their drivers every week and gives the media corps a chance to talk with a Ford driver. Cole Custer was that man today, coming off a season-best 8th-place finish in Mexico City. Obviously, last year, Stewart Haas Racing shuts down. Gene Haas retains one charter. Haas Factory Team is they're the I don't know how to put it. I guess I don't know. It's difficult to say. They're a new team, kind of the same entity. It's a weird deal. There's not much that's the same, but there's also a few things that are the same with them and what was Stewart Haas Racing. But anyway, Cole Custer obviously got demoted from Cup at the end of 2022. Won an Xfinity Series championship with what was then SHR. Now Haas Factory Team. We still got the two cars in the Xfinity Series, of course, with Mayer and Sheldon Creed, and then they have Custer in the Cup Series car. So I asked him, as the lone Cup Series driver at an organization that is trying to build back better, trying to be a phoenix rising from the ashes, is there any added pressure being the face of that company, the face of a NASCAR Cup Series organization? Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all put the pressure on ourselves. At this level, we all want to go win. A lot of everybody on our team, there's a lot of people who have won races on our team that have, expect to go run out front. So I feel like it's a matter of, we want to go. That's our end goal, is go and compete for wins. So we're putting that pressure on ourselves, and we know we need to get better. And I think at the end of the day, our guys aren't going to stop working until we get there.
Appreciate that answer, Cole. He had a lot of other good stuff to say about how that team is trying to build their notebook and trying to build a program again. Read that. I'll link the article I wrote about that in the description below. Last thing I want to do on the show, I mentioned I'll be in Pocono, and I want to pick these races. I want to talk briefly about each of these three races this weekend. You got the Truck Series going to Pocono, the Miller Tech Battery 200, right? That's right. That's the longest race I think they've had there for the Truck Series in maybe ever, because I remember it was like 150 one year and then 175, and they're boasting about putting it up to 175. I don't think any Truck Series race, unless it's a road course, obviously, or a short track, should be under 200 miles. I think at some point you're sacrificing the racecraft of these young drivers when you just cut these races so short. But that's convo for a different day. Corey Heim and Christian Eckes were the dominant trucks in this race last year. Heim won the race. I'm going to pick Corey Heim to get win number 5. I'm really high on this guy. I really think he's something special. I think he needs to get out of the Truck Series sooner rather than later, but while he's still there, at least he can do is collect trophies. And I think that's what he's going to do this weekend. The Xfinity Series race, I think that also got bumped up in mileage. In distance, if I remember correctly, last year was 225 miles, up to 250 this year. 250, 2.5 mile track, the Tricky Triangle out in Long Pond, PA. So 250 miles, 100 laps for the Xfinity Series on Saturday. I normally lean towards JRM cars for these intermediate ovals. Pocono's a triangle, not an oval, but it's hard to know who to pick for this race. But Custer did win here. Was it last year? It was last year? Or was that Austin Hill and Custer won the last two at Pocono and Xfinity? I know that. I'm going to go with Sam Mayer. They've had speed a lot of weeks. They haven't been able to win yet, which is really surprising to me that they haven't been able to break through and get into victory lane. But I'm going to pick Mayer. The Cup race on Sunday, and I also wrote about this earlier in the week, Denny Hamlin's situation, missing Mexico City, having Ryan Truex fill in. That was, I think, it was the best scenario for Denny Hamlin. Obviously, personally, that comes first, right? His fiancee, Jordan Fish, gives birth to their son. Sounds like everybody's healthy. That's great. That's obviously the most important deal there. But he misses Mexico City. Denny only has one road course win and like 58 road course starts or something like that. It's some crazy number like out of road course starts that he has, and just no wins or one win to show for it. He ain't good at road courses. He comes back. Of course, he has that win at Michigan, so he's got some momentum on his side. Obviously, the 11 team is fast. Where does the Cup Series go the week he comes back? Pocono Raceway, a track where he's won at a record 7 times. Won here most recently in 2023. Won it in 2022 initially until he was DQ'd, so it could have been 8 times, a record 8 times, but it's 7 as it stands. And he's always been in the front of these races, these next-gen races at Pocono. 2022, Chase Elliott won, obviously, after the DQ. Last year, Ryan Blaney won it. Blaney will be strong. I think William Byron, Kyle Larson, they'll be strong. Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick's been good there as of late. But I think at the end of the day, Denny Hamlin has the know-how to get around that place like nobody else has. He's probably going to be my pick to win the pole, too. I think qualifying comes in big at Pocono because those fields can get really strung out there. Pocono is a fun track, though. It's seen much better racing in recent years and whatnot. So I'm excited to be there. Hopefully, like I said, at the least, I'll have one live show from there to recap all the action. Hoping for 3. If we can't get 3, hopefully 2. If we can't get 2, you'll at least have 1 from Pocono Raceway. I'm Samuel Stubbs, the host of the Scrum Session podcast, yardbarker.com/NASCAR to read all of my NASCAR work and coverage for the weekend at Pocono and all the time. Thank you guys for listening. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on whatever podcast platforms this thing is on. And we will see you next Thursday with the 5th episode of Scrum Session. Goodbye, everybody.